I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst. On the program, is 24 Sussex Drive worth maintaining?
It's like a symbol, you know.
It has to be maintained.
People's lives are more important than buildings.
It's worth maintaining, but at what cost?
But first, voter turnout in recent federal elections and even recent provincial elections is not what many would consider high. The lowest turnout ever federally was back in 2008, when 58.8% of Canadians showed up at the polling stations. The pandemic, of course, took up a lot of the focus. But when it comes to following the work done by our elected officials, what would it take to make you pay more attention, especially when it comes time to vote? Our question. What would make you more interested in Canadian politics?
Wow, that's a great question. Because I follow American politics more than Canadian politics. I think in part because it's sort of merchandised to us like a sport. And there's this binary, it's very easy to understand. There's one party and the other. Canadian politics, I guess I'd like to see some more firebrand politicians that a bunch of people are interested in. It can be a little frustrating to have candidates sort of provided for you. And I'd love to see a candidate who came from the masses, can invigorate the masses, and not someone that I feel like suits are picking for us.
Basically, more information out there on what's happening, what are the things they're working on currently, what is the things most money spent on, all that, just to know more.
What would make me more interested is if the members of the federal cabinet played a greater role than they have played recently, and I mean in the last 10 years. When I was younger, I knew the names of everyone in the cabinet. Now I don't know who serves in the cabinet because all the decisions are made inside the Prime Minister's office, and that's been happening for some time.
Pretty much everything. Right now, the Conservative leadership race, not quite certain that Poilievre is good news for this country, but we'll see how it turns out.
I force myself to be mildly interested in Canadian politics. I guess the most interesting thing would be if people would ask politicians questions that they could easily answer instead of asking them difficult questions that are nearly impossible to answer.
Like with the pandemic, I think there's a lot of questions people had about, when are we going to get the vaccine and when are things opening up, and having some more info of a rough plan. It kind of felt like we were in the dark a bit. So maybe feeling like you're a little less in the dark and getting more information, maybe make me feel a little more engaged.
Well, I myself am very interested in Canadian politics. What would make it more interesting? I think if we had an American tinge to it, but then things would get complicated. Better the way we are.
If there was more transparency, if I could actually see exactly how the money's spent, where it's going. I find that we're constantly being told, about all this money, and it's our money, it's taxpayers' money, but we don't actually know exactly where it's going or how much things cost. It would be nice to know, I think.
I feel like I'm pretty well informed in certain Canadian politics, so for me, I'm already, caught up. But if we're trying to get an audience of other people, just, transparency, I think, would make a big difference. So
hearing more true things rather than the kind of speech that we're currently listening to.
I think better leadership. Better articulation of policy. I think it feels like so many Canadians are voting for the least troublesome person more often than not, and we're not voting for policies that we want to see enacted. We're voting for personalities, and I'd like to see better leadership.
To be honest, a lot of focus on social services, and just if I see the government investing in a lot more social services, I'm going to be paying attention and investing my time and energy in the politics.
Maybe if it was more targeted towards young people my age in the news and stuff, just because I feel like it's always targeted more towards older generations. But recently with social media and stuff, I do see myself getting more involved as well, because I know that people my age are talking about it.
Better politicians, not the old guard. We need some fresh blood. and we don't seem to have it in this country. And when you look, well, in any, even in the States, and you look, it's all the old guard. We need some fresh blood, some more excitement in politics, which would, I think, get everybody else involved in it. Right now, people, it's just the same old, same old.
I just think more appealing candidates. If I like the candidates more, like, for example, this past election, I wasn't really enthused with anybody. And so it took a lot for me to go out and vote. It was almost like a protest vote. So I'd like to see better candidates, more appealing candidates.
The thing that annoys me about politics or politicians is that they're so negative towards each other and they always put each other down.
Don't care for the mudslinging.
Instead of doing that, why don't they say what they can do to improve things and say it instead of pointing fingers and say what they did wrong, the other person did wrong. That's what I don't like about politics, and that's what turns me off of it.
Probably politicians that are a little bit less partisan, because right now most of them seem to always agree with their, the standard the political party's stance on a particular issue. I'd like to see more free votes in the House, if I'm being honest, so that the actual MPs can vote in favor of what their constituents want rather than the party wants. So a little bit more freedom in the House.
Talking about real issues, things that people really want changed. Otherwise it's just hearsay and blah, 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 more blah, which seems to be the thing that happens over and over and over. It doesn't matter who's in charge.
As we approach the 2.5-year mark of this pandemic, we've learned that COVID-19 did not discriminate, affecting so many people from all walks of life. So once again, we take to the streets to ask Canadians about the impression this virus has left on them up to now. Our question: how has your life changed since the pandemic began?
To be honest, we're more family conscious. We spend more time together. We were more laid back, less stressed out, and we're careful about the finances like many.
So I've transitioned to working from home. My kids have been with me, so it's been quite busy, and a lot of juggling, a lot of trying to find activities outdoors just to kind of keep our friends and family safe, but still have that community and still be able to do our jobs properly. So a lot of Microsoft Teams as well. That's how we interact with our coworkers now.
It's been very challenging in positive and negative way. I mean, positive in terms of getting to know myself more, and in a negative way, not getting to know other people and the people that I've been knowing a lot. So it's been both.
Since it began, a lot has changed in terms of just like living arrangements, working arrangements, new hobbies, dropped some hobbies, new relationships. So a lot of things just kind of forced a lot of big changes, so it adapted. Like life adapted very differently, and some things stuck around and some things didn't. But I think a lot of it was quite positive for the most part. Obviously it came with its struggles, but I think some things definitely came out on top. Definitely like working arrangements, stronger relationships, living arrangements, stuff like that have changed quite a bit.
Honestly, it's gotten a little bit tighter, especially with financial situation. I mean, when the pandemic happened, I got laid off, so I was off for about 1.5 years, and obviously that's a big deal. Yeah, I'm still trying to catch up from that, to be honest with you.
I feel like now people are less happy, at least some of my friends I know, because they're just facing troubles, buying day-to-day stuff, which was not a big deal back then, I think.
It just accelerated my desire to get out of the educational system. And so we've made a few decisions in my household. Both of us are retiring because of actually safety issues. My husband was in dentistry, and he also had the same, fears.
One key advantage the pandemic brought to all of us is the ability to work remotely, because I feel like that gets rid of a lot of the arbitrary commute times and expenses we have to deal with to go to work conventionally in person in a brick and mortar place. Now it seems like it's sped up the embrace of digital working, which has advantaged me in particular. I can't say the same for people who work with their hands and in person. I'm sure they're still feeling a little bit of the squeeze given some of the restrictions, but I definitely feel like as a worker, the fact that I can work virtually, there's a little bit more power in my hands now.
The way it's changed everything, my whole way of thinking. So hopefully
in the next few years we can put it behind us, but it's still here, and it's still weighing heavy on my mind every day.
I used to run events, and that all kind of got canceled because of the pandemic. Couldn't have, events anymore, but we're starting to get back into the swing of things. It's a little different, the climate, but we're just rolling with it. That's all we can say. We're just rolling with it.
My husband died the same time the pandemic came, so basically you're quite alone. You're really alone, and you try and not to rely on your children, but you have to rely on children. I found that I have to rely on other people more than I did before.
My life hasn't changed all that much. There's some good, there's some bad, but I'd like the whole thing to be over.
Well, as a teacher, I got a lot better at technology because I had to teach online, so it totally changed my approach to teaching. It's a lot better, I think. So I see a lot of positives, and we do a lot of other things we never did before. Like, we know every trail in Oakville now. So we have a dog, and we like to walk, and every park in the neighborhood we know now that we didn't know before. And we got more into fitness outside, riding our bikes and things like that. So for me, it's changed in a positive way.
Financially, it's been better because for a while there wasn't a lot of, spending on eating out and going out and stuff. So financially, it's been better. Working from home has been really nice. So in that sense, also the sort of no commute and being able to work from home has been really good on my well-being and mental health.
More time with family, less sitting on the hamster wheel and feeling like you're constantly going, appreciating the days like this and the time. Yeah.
Now you're seeing a return to work, but because of the return to work, companies are being a little bit more creative, so we're seeing a lot more freedom in terms of how people go about their day-to-day with their jobs.
Since the pandemic began, I was doing my master's, and I'm still doing it. It's been a long time, and it's taken longer than I thought. So for sure I had to take more time for myself, different mental health issues, and also difficulty working in my field. So that's, taking more time for me to finish my master's, taking more time to get a job at the end. So
I think, like many Canadians, I've started working from home, and so it has changed working habits, and also I happen to go more outside and enjoy the area here, the Mount Royal.
In terms of the pandemic itself, all of our lives have changed because we've been wearing masks and have had to keep our distance, and we're not socializing as much anymore, seeing as many friends, so the circle has gotten smaller.
Yeah, everything from my artistic practice to my lifestyle, it's changed for the better, though. I think it's a good time to reflect, and was able to change things, I think, for a healthier lifestyle overall.
How many women have served as Minister of National Defence in Canada? 1, 2, or 3?
1.
2.
1. 1.
1. It's a complete guess, so 33% chance I'll say 1.
1.
Anan is the only one I know of, so 1.
I think it's 1.
1.
I'd say 1.
I say 2.
1.
The answer is 2.
Oh, there you go. Good guess.
You're brilliant. The number of women to serve as Minister of National Defence in Canada is 2. Kim Campbell served as Minister of National Defence for 6 months between January and June of 1993, making her the first woman to occupy the job. She, of course, went on to be the first female Canadian Prime Minister. More recently, on October 26, 2021, Anita Anand was sworn in as the second woman to occupy the role of Minister of National Defence. She is also the first woman of Hindu heritage to become a federal cabinet minister. When it comes to Canadiana, 24 Sussex Drive can definitely be included in the conversation. It's been home to almost every Canadian Prime Minister since Louis St. Laurent first moved in back in 1949. But lately, it's fallen into disrepair, and the price tag to fix it is estimated at $37 million, which would include upgrades on electrical, plumbing, and security. But some feel the property has outlived its usefulness and should be made a thing of the past. Conversely, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has lived at Rideau Cottage, just steps away from 24 Sussex, since he first became Prime Minister back in 2015. So, what do you think about this? Our question: is 24 Sussex Drive worth maintaining?
Absolutely. It is our Prime Minister of our country, and he deserves to have the absolute best world-class quarters to live in. It is a shame that we are even thinking about it. Would we think, would Americans think if White House needed it? So why is it that we are even thinking about it? It needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed now, and he deserves to be there.
Absolutely not.
Why
Live
not?
like the rest of us. Just because he's a prime minister, does he have to live in $1 million place? No. Sorry, but he doesn't. Give it to the rest that need it here.
No. Why not? Yeah, he can run the country from wherever, right? I don't think it has to be a set location or a set home. No, I mean, there's probably cheaper places that he can go and he can afford to live in, and as taxpayers, we can find those cheaper places.
So I think it's worth keeping. Of course, your house and my house probably doesn't have asbestos, right? So why should the Prime Minister live in a place with asbestos? So it makes sense to renovate. It is going to be costly, but I'm sure we can afford it.
It's worth maintaining, but at what cost? If we're spending millions on this place, and I would say more than just a few million, the country in so many different places, especially seniors. Seniors that don't get their teeth done because they can't afford it, can't get their eye vision. It needs to be refocused. Build them a new place or rent them a condo.
I think yes. I think the country needs to have a showcase when we have all the foreign dignitaries come over.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be worth putting money into. It's a tradition. I don't have any issue with that.
No, absolutely not. There's so many other things to prioritize right now, and if that's been on the hold for years at this point, with still no end goal as to when it's going to be finished, why are we not prioritizing other things like, income inequality or access to just more resources for the homeless? Just things like that have more of a priority right now than this house that's not being used at all. So I think it's completely absurd that we're even thinking about it still at this point. So no, it's not necessary.
Every place needs to be updated, I guess. I don't know how old the building is, but if it's an old building, it probably needs the work. And you gotta kind of suck it up and get it done, right?
Well, I think it's worth maintaining it if they live in there. It's like a symbol, where the Prime Minister is going to live. So I think it's worth maintaining it, but at a reasonable price, I would say.
I was in the construction business for 40 years, so things don't last forever. Every once in a while you have to renovate. And I know that 24 Sussex Drive is not a new building, so sooner or later you're going to have to renovate it. As long as they get the bidding process in order where they have a lot of bids and it's a fair bidding process and the lowest number gets the job, so that's about as good as it's going to get.
No, we can't do it that way. It has to be on hold. We'll fix the inflation because it's just a building. People's lives are more important than buildings. It's about time.
Yeah, as far as Sussex goes, it's a pretty unique thing to Canada because, the Prime Minister's home is in a state of disrepair. At this point, just make it a museum. Make it like a thing you could visit, a little cultural hub, a little cultural site, because I don't know if how much tradition is packed in there. Prime Minister should just operate from a place he's functional and comfortable with, right?
Well, I'm an architect, so I guess I do believe in that. And I think, as a nation's capital, you do need to spend money into actually maintaining your infrastructure, your buildings, and we do want it to look good on kind of a national or not national, but international level, to the world, not have buildings crumbling in, the political structure and stuff.
It's worth maintaining for
Canada because it's Canada's property. If they can spend all the money that they have to spend to maintain Parliament Hill, which Canada owns, they can certainly do what it takes to maintain the Prime Minister's residence, because it's not owned by the Prime Minister, it's used by the Prime Minister, it's owned by Canada. So just for historical purposes, it has to be maintained.
It's always crazy expensive. Whenever they start these renovations, it explodes for some reason, but I'm not against, keeping upkeep of our history and our, our patrimoine and whatnot. So I'm not sure if it's unnecessary, but it's expensive for sure.
Would it be worth it? I think from an international perspective, every head of state, I think, needs to project a little bit of an image of, as we would say in French, aisance, of ease, yes. Of ease and a tad bit of luxury. I wouldn't like our Prime Minister, be whoever it might be or she might be, live in a squalid area. But that price tag is just a tad high.
Yes.
But I wouldn't think twice about chipping in 1 or 2 extra tax dollars for that.
The pandemic has not made things easier for those people looking to invest in their own future. High interest rates, soaring housing costs, and an ever-growing inflation rate is crushing the dream of those aspiring to own their own home, pay affordable rent, or even earn a living wage. So we sent our cameras out to ask Canadians if they feel hopeful about their financial situation in the long term. Our question: how are you feeling about your financial future?
I think, like many Canadians, I'm worried about the inflation, and I start to pay attention to my expenses. Even though I have a good income, I think it affects all classes of the population.
I'm feeling okay for the most part, but if I'm trying to think in like a 5-year plan, I have no idea. I'm almost at a loss, but I'm figuring it out every day.
Well, I was thinking of getting a job. I didn't think I was going to need to, but I think I'm going to have to get a part-time job just to make ends meet and to make sure that inflation doesn't affect me too much, because right now grocery bills are crazy. I'm lucky not to have a car, so that's a lot of savings for sure. But it's also an inconvenience not to have a car, and we don't think we're going to be able to buy one in the near future for sure.
I don't know if I'll be able to pay my rent in 5 years. So it's pretty scary because things are going up too quick and nobody's doing nothing about it. Gas companies are filling their pockets.
Not too well with everything that rising up and going up in terms of the prices and fees and interest rates. I'm pretty much worried about the future, pretty much worried about the kids, the next generations, what's going to be.
I think I'm very lucky. Like my husband and I, we both work for the federal government. So I think, as long as we're responsible with our finances and we're not, overspending, I think I'm very lucky. I'm in the lucky group.
Like many, I don't know. I'm one of the fortunate that have a steady job, but we're seeing the price rise. It's for gas, it's for food. I'm not going to say we're worried, but we're careful.
It's not too bad. I guess there's always a question of how is that going to affect interest rates and things like that on mortgages and that kind of thing. But for myself, it's not too bad, though I do worry what the grand scheme is going to be for a lot of Canadians.
Depends on the stock market. It changes up and down. So some days good, some days not so good. Just depends, right? When it's going up, you're feeling good. When it's going down, you're feeling bad.
Well, I'm kind of on my downslide, so my financial future's okay. I don't know about my grandchildren, though, the way the cost is going.
Pretty good. We've been good savers in our family for quite a while now. I learned some very tough lessons early on in my life about financial management and have put them into play and feeling a little bit better. But certainly, the cost of milk is up, the cost of gas is up, everything's going up. And so, we're trying to make it go, but so far so good.
I'm feeling good. Why? Because I have a really good financial manager, my husband. So we're feeling good about it. No, we have good jobs, and for us, the stability's there, and yeah, just planning and taking time to think about our retirement plans has done a world of difference for us. So I'm feeling good.
Obviously, businesses such as those around here have been really hit hard by the pandemic. So collectively, I'm a little bit more apprehensive. Individually, I'm not, but collectively, I'm a little bit more worried for us as a country because of inflation and debt, and you know, and for our kids' future as well, right? So yeah, that's definitely a concern for us.
Credit card debts, car loans, mortgage renewals. How is it helping us? Not at all.
I think I'll be okay. I worry more so about the younger generation, like my children. For example, you know, we've bought our house, we've been in our house for about 20 years. But you know, kids coming up now and needing to buy somewhere to live or, you know, invest in a property, it's so much harder these days. So I'm not so much worried about myself per se, but maybe the younger generation. I just hope that they're, you know, with phones, with everything that they have going on, that they have enough to understand what it takes to live comfortably.
Before pandemic, I was planning to buy a house for myself, and which has completely changed right now. Before pandemic, I was actually thinking to buy a house here in Vaughan, but now I don't even think I can afford a house far in Barrie. So that was the one goal which I had prior to pandemic. With my current job, which, like, again, everybody knows that the salaries have not gone up that much in the last 2 years, but the houses prices, the groceries, everything has gone up. So that was the one goal which I had, which I'll need to think about again.
I don't know what to say about our children. It's more about our children because we are in our season. Our children are the leaders of tomorrow. And if there's no future, if the future is uncertain, our children have problems tomorrow. And it's not a good place to live for our children. We need to fix it now.
Very insecure, you know, like a lot of Canadians, right? I mean, like you were saying before, inflation levels are up to points we've never seen before. Tons of other unprecedented economic obstacles, you know, in our way. Real estate being one of them, right? Price of goods, you know, all of the income inequality, you know, our wages stagnating. There's just like too many to count.
Honestly, it's a little bit worrisome because everything just keeps going up, and I mean, it's like thinking about, you know, buying a house and things like that. I mean, if things keep increasing, it's like, how am I even gonna get to that point? You know what I'm saying?
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.